All right. Good evening to you all. Welcome to this webinar entitled Your Career 2.0, Industry Experts and Vocational Education and Training. My name is Amy Crennan and I'm the lead educator here for vet teacher training here at Kangan Institute. Now, before we get started, I'd just like to run through some etiquette for this webinar. So you will have the opportunity to ask questions throughout the webinar. So I'd ask you to please type any questions into the Q&A button that you see at the bottom of your screen. Catherine will be your moderator for the session this evening. They will be answering some of the questions throughout the webinar. And if your question isn't answered during the webinar, we'll address any further questions at the end. Just a note, we won't be using the raise hand function in tonight's webinar. So as I said, please type your questions in if you have any. And just a final reminder to please be respectful of the rights, the privacy, safety and opinions and beliefs of others and demonstrate appropriate and respectful behaviour and use of language. Before I commence the session as a whole, I'd first like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. Even though we are meeting remotely, I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past and present and to the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may also be here today. So in our webinar this evening, we're going to be covering some information, some background information about vocational education and training. So what that actually looks like, how it can be and give your career a new life, and a little bit about what registered training organisations look like, as well as vocational education and training. We'll give you a bit of information about some roles and different opportunities. So being a trainer or an assessor is not the only role that you could do. You could be gaining in a registered training organisation. Look at the all-important salary range, and then I'll open it up to questions at the end. I thought I'd start this session by giving you a little bit of information about me. I've come from a career in education, so I've always been in that area. I started as a primary teacher, and you can see my beautiful bunny ears here, over 20 years ago. And since that time, I've had 3 children, moved house a few times, married a wonderful man, and looked at a range of different careers. I've been, as well as being in education, I've worked in aged care. I've been a kitchen assistant. I've been a cleaner. I've been a call centre operator. I've even pumped petrol at a petrol station. And the reality that we face today is not unlike what I've experienced to this point. Statistics that I found from the Australian College of Applied Psychology say that in our lifetimes we're likely to have 5 to 7 career changes, and that is the new average for Australian workers. Some of the reasons why people leave those roles might be, as you can see on this slide here, it might be about boredom. You might have found yourself redundant, and particularly in the current environment, that is happening more and more. Some people become injured. The stress of the role no longer allows them to participate in that job effectively. They feel insecure about their roles, or they feel unappreciated. I left primary teaching more than 10 years ago now for my personal reasons, and that was that I had children of my own, and I no longer felt engaged with other people's children, and then felt like I had enough left over at the end of the day to work, to actually be there and be active and present with my own children. So everyone has their own reasons why we leave those roles. The reality is that people are working longer and they are retiring later. So this poses a problem. We know that when we start a new career, we move into a different industry, we actually leave behind a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge. And then we have to go and we have to learn something brand new. So the question that I'm asking is, what do we do if we have to start again? How can we actually use the skills and knowledge that we have and in fact find somewhere that we can go that not only accepts and appreciates those skills and knowledge, but actually wants you to have that existing skills and knowledge. And I know you've all heard the old adage, those who can do, those who can't teach. But vocational education and training is very, very different. We want people who can do to be able to teach, to be able to train and assess. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview about vocational education and training, or VET as we refer to it. So obviously you're at the Kangan Virtual Open Day. We're a TAFE provider, so we're a training and further education provider, but we're not the only type of organisation that delivers vocational education and training services all around Australia. People will participate in different types of training throughout their lives, and what we deliver in vocational education and training is what's referred to as accredited training. And that's where you receive a certificate or a statement of attainment on successful completion of a qualification. And that qualification then is portable. You can take it from Victoria, it could go to Cairns, or you could go to Broome, or you could go to Tasmania. And industry expects, and in fact, they want us to have the meaning behind that qualification. So no matter where you take it, they can assume a certain level of skills and knowledge and understanding about the industry your qualification relates to. So that's the accredited training. Not accredited training might be where you receive a certificate of participation. You might have had experience with it in your workplaces where you've done workshops, you've had peer mentoring, or you've done staff development, or any of those sort of range of things. They're still completely valid forms of education. You learn new skills, understandings about legislation or new policies and procedures, or enhancing your understandings of components of your career. But they don't have this nationally recognised training logo associated with them. So the quality can vary quite dramatically between professional development and between different components of training. So the nationally recognised training sector, or the VET sector, has 3 different types of training organisations that sit under it. We have the enterprise training organisations, and you might have a little bit of experience with this. This is where an enterprise or a company actually register as a registered training organisation. So as you're learning on the job, you might be attaining a qualification or accredited units of competency that complement that learning. A couple of examples of enterprise training organisations are McDonald's. You might have heard of McDonald's University, for example. Woolworths also offer accredited training. You can come out with a Certificate 3 in retail or Certificate 3 in customer service, as well as qualifications in leadership and management, whatever that organisation needs. Now, a private training provider can be for-profit or not for profit. It's one that is not a government, not a government organisation. They still may receive government funding to deliver the training and assessment, and all of these training providers must keep to a consistent standard in line with the legislation that we have and we have to adhere to. So a private training organisation might be something like Campaspe College in Echuca, or examples, TDT training in Bendigo. So they are private. They might have a smaller number of qualifications that you could enrol in and complete, and they might have specialisations. The public provider is where Kangan Institute sits. So public providers tend to be large organisations that deliver a wide range of qualifications from everywhere from trades to community services and health, to vet teacher training, and foundation skills and everything in between. Each of these different training provider types play a very important role in the training landscape in Australia. And each of these training organisations require specifically qualified people to deliver the training and assessment processes and within that organisation. So now I'm sure you're wondering, who can actually hold a position, a training and assessment position in a registered training organisation? The answer to that is somebody who holds, and you can see here I've given you the qualification code and title because that's something we're required to do, the certificate for in training and assessment, or a higher qualification in adult education. So when I came into the TAFE sector almost 12 years ago now, I walked in and thought, I'm a primary and secondary teacher, this should be fine, they'll just be able to let me have the position. And I was incredibly wrong, because you do need to have experience with adult education. So if you're looking at this, looking at a role in a training organisation and you have a similar background to me, so you have a primary or secondary education background, unfortunately you will have to complete a qualification such as Certificate 4 in Training and Assessment. Now the Cert 4 is the entry level qualification. So that is the minimum that you have to achieve before you can train and assess. You also need to be able to demonstrate vocational competency. And what vocational competency is having the skills and knowledge and attitudes that relate directly to industry experience. That may or may not equate to actually holding a qualification or specific unit of competency. So it's not going to completely prevent you if you've worked for somewhere for 30 years and you know it in and out, you upside down and everything in between. But it can be organisations can find a little bit difficult to make sure that they can align your skills and knowledge with a unit of competency that you could teach. So when we're talking about vocational competency, to maybe preempt a question, we're looking at least 3 years of experience in your industry. What training and assessment and vocational education and training is not looking for is people who are fresh out of completing a qualification who want to become a trainer. You need to go out and get the experience. You need to get on the tools. That's not to say that in a training organisation that is the only role that you could potentially have. You could translate the skills that you have in other areas into a wide variety of roles in a training organisation. And I've just listed a couple here for you to consider. So if you have experience in professional writing and editing, for example, combine that with a Certificate 4 in Training and Assessment, you could find yourself a role as an instructional designer. If management is your area and you're looking at a management role, you can certainly be looking at things like lead or senior educators or education managers as well. If quality and compliance is an area that you have expertise in, we certainly have a strict quality and governance guidelines, and we have roles that align with that to ensure that the training and assessment that you receive, that our students receive, is of the highest quality. If you don't want to, if you're interested in helping others, and if you have literacy, numeracy background, you could find yourself in a role supporting people through learning support or disability support. So becoming a tutor within a room or providing specialist support to support students to bridge their gaps and accomplish their goals. And if you don't want to be stuck in a classroom or in an office all day, there are roles that are involve being a workplace assessor. So going out to see apprentices in the workplace and assessing them while they're performing their jobs. This is just some of the very many roles that you could attain working in a training organisation. Of course, we have finance and we have lawyers and we have customer service and we have administration, all of those things. And having a Certificate 4 in Training and Assessment would be incredibly beneficial if you were looking at a role in a training organisation, because the qualification helps you really understand what it means to work effectively in a registered training or in the vet space. And I will say it's actually a really good time to be considering a role in a training organisation or in TAFE. A couple of years ago, The free TAFE program was introduced by the current government, and now we offer up to 30, in addition, or more than 30 free TAFE courses. And we're seeing increases in enrolments every year. People want to access that training so that they can create a better future for themselves. And of course, where we have enrolments, we need teachers. Scott Morrison recently also announced the federal job trainer program to provide an additional layer of support around the current COVID environment. And it's been projected that close to 90,000 training places are going to be created just in Victoria. Again, we're going to need trainers and assessors to help with the load. The Working for Victoria program that was implemented earlier in the year, again in response to COVID, has been incredibly successful. And to date, there's been over 6,000 enrolments in that program just since April. So looking at those smaller, those Working for Victoria programs might be smaller, they might be what we call micro credentials, but will definitely need support and industry expertise to help develop and grow them and support the students. And across the board, there has been an increased demand for qualified trainers and assessors in a broad range of qualifications. So if you're thinking about becoming a trainer or assessor, there's never been a better time to explore your options to work in a registered training organisation. And if that's not enough to appeal to you, the current salary range, and this I'll specify that this is for a group of TAFEs within Victoria. If you were to be a sessional or a casual trainer and assessor, your starting wage would be around $50 an hour. And as you grow with your expertise and capability as a trainer and assessor, that could go all the way up to over $70 an hour. And on a full-time salary, between $70,000 and $100,000, depending on your training and assessment qualifications and your years of experience in the sector. So there's never been a better time to explore a career and a role within a training organisation. So just from that, so to keep in mind, this is an opportunity to give your qualifications and give your skills and experience a new life. Some people think that they can never teach, but then they reflect on what they've been doing for the last 10 years, and they're the person that the new staff member comes to and they ask the question, what do I do here? Or they're the person who's made responsible for arranging or actually running the staff professional development. So don't think you can't. Think you can. And give yourself an opportunity to give your experiences new life with a qualification in training and assessment. I'm going to open it up to questions now. Is there anyone who'd like to ask a question or provide a comment? I might stop sharing this at the moment so I can see if anyone's around.
Thanks so much for that, Amy. We had a couple of questions come through, which I've been able to field from Sonia. The first was she was just wanting to know, she missed the first half of the presentation and if she could watch it later. And I have let her know, and I'll let everyone listening know that we will be posting Amy's presentation online at our Open Day website, and that'll be available from tomorrow afternoon. So if you have a friend or a family member or you just like to rewatch, it'll be available there.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Catherine.
No worries. And if anybody has any questions, just type them into the Q&A section now. We'll give you about 30 seconds to get a question through. And if we don't receive one, I think we could probably wrap up.
Keep it short and sweet.
That's it.
I know it's just about dinner time for everybody, and I appreciate you joining in this evening. Everyone's very quiet this evening.
It's true. I think that's it. We haven't had anything come through.
Absolutely
so thank you
fine.
Very much for speaking with us tonight, Amy.
Not a problem. And look, if you do have any questions after this evening, if you call the 13 TAFE number and ask to speak to me, Amy Crennan, they'll get a message to me and I'm happy to have a further discussion. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this, to watch this presentation.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Amy. I will end this now.
Thank you.